Hey everybody, um, welcome from Miami. Actually, it's Hollywood, Florida, which is 35 minutes from Miami, which is where my wife works now. I got married on Saturday. It's pretty crazy. This is our new little place. It's a little condo. I should probably give you like a little tour because it feels natural, so I'm gonna do it. First, this is our backyard. That is the residential area of Hollywood, Florida. A lot of greenery. The ocean is to our right, but we are not one of the cool guys on the top floor, so we cannot see the ocean. And this is downtown Hollywood over there. Kinda, sort of. Anyways, yeah. So, um, yeah. And there's a cat somewhere. There's the cat. Hey, Cavalli. That's pretty much it. And that was sunshine. That's what sunshine looks like. I don't know how the summer is. I'm sure it's gorgeous over there. Anyways, I'm here to give you a spiel about ethics, culture, and psychology. Let me make sure this is all working. So I think if I set this up here, you can see both me and the presentation, right? Okay. So, ethics, culture, and psychology. Oh, and before I even begin, thank you, Tressa. Thank you, Rachel, for putting this like all together and making it work and stuff. It's been very difficult with the whole me being on the other side of the continent kind of thing. So, thank you guys, and thank you cohort 4 for being there. Thank you cohort 3 for being there. And I'm a married man, Dr. Davison. So I'll be coming to see you soon for maybe therapy, not even supervision. Just kidding. So. First thing I want to talk about was how, in many ways, the things of, well, in terms of what is to come, it's in the classroom. Our classrooms are, in terms of multicultural counseling, the classroom represent the diversification that is this nation. And so for us as multicultural counselors, it's important to understand the classroom, how diverse it is, because these young kids in elementary school, middle school, high school, they eventually become adults, and they end up seeing us as adolescents or as toddlers. They come to psychologists, and so it's important for us to understand that the classroom is very diverse. And so I dabbed into school psychology a little bit because they're kind of big on ethics, the school psychologists. And here's what I pulled out. So Williams in 2007, he defines cultural competent practices as behaviors and policies that enable psychologists to work effectively to address the social, behavioral, mental health, and community needs of diverse patients in diverse and various cultures. And very interesting, by the year 2040, no one ethnic or racial group will make up a majority of the U.S. school-age population. This means that the patient population will also be more diversified, as I was saying. These school-age population folks, they eventually become our patients one way or another. So be ready for that. Be ready for diversity to make it to your front door at your clinic, because it is coming and you cannot run away from it. So the next slide, we were on our way to get our marriage license, and on the way to the courthouse was the Metro Dade Cultural Center. And I was like, wow, I'm doing this cultural presentation with Rachel and Tressa, so why not take a picture of it and walk inside for a second? So we did our marriage license first and all that. We were sworn in by a nice Haitian man, but I forgot his name, but man, he was hilarious. But anyway, so after we got our little marriage certificate, I came back to the Metro Dade Cultural Center, and there was a lot of cool stuff in there, a lot of stuff from Seminole Indians and the Miccosukee Indians, which are Native Americans out in Florida, and a lot of stuff about the Cubans and the Latino population, of course, and the African Americans who came to South Florida after they had been freed from slavery. A lot of them came down here and started helping with sugarcane and stuff like that. So yeah, I took a little trip to the Metro Dade Cultural Center. Also, this young lady, she is not a young lady. I found that out because she walked very, very close by me, and she was very interesting, or he was very interesting. But there I am explaining my own cultural ignorance in some ways. But yeah, that's just typical Miami, transvestite walking down the sidewalk. Anyways, when I was in the Metro Dade Cultural Center, I was thinking about culture and also the human race. And more importantly, human being, that term. And for me, I've always thought that the medical model, and I'm sure a lot of other people think this, that the medical model kind of examines the human, the genetics, the genotype, the meat and bones that lay before them, right? The human. But in the medical model, sometimes the being gets overlooked. And so, I guess in nicer words, there's a tendency to examine the human and disregard the being, is what I'm trying to say. And we are all born human, I hope, unless some of us converted from, like, I don't know, parrot, fish, whatever. We are human, but the family we are born into, the way we are raised, and our beliefs about life make us the being. So for me, it's the culture that make us the being. So human equals Homo sapien, and then being equals culture of the human. So that's the way I see it. That the human is the Homo sapien, and the being of human being is the culture. So that was something that I was thinking about while I was walking down the Metro Dade Cultural Center, to kind of like expand my consciousness on this whole topic and whatever. And it'll all relate to ethics soon, I promise. Actually, here it comes. The lab is ethical. The couch, not so much. What I mean by that is that therapeutic sessions are kind of not falling within the realms of ethics, and there's a reason for that. And counseling and therapy, we have a history of protecting the status quo as perceived by the minority cultures. There's this thing called scientific racism, where we used to have scientific techniques and hypotheses to sanction the belief in racial superiority, inferiority, or racism, right? So like, which race is more superior? Which race is more inferior? We used to like honestly pursue this and call it scientific research. Now we don't do that type of racist stuff. Now we are more culturally competent in the lab. However, in the couch or in the therapy session, because the therapist and the patient are both embedded in this social and cultural matrix, cultural bias, it may come forth during sessions on both sides of the couch for the patient and the client. And so that's something to be aware of, to understand that we are embedded in our own social and cultural context, and that things will seep out of us because of it. And sometimes we might find ourselves to be saying something that could be termed a microaggression during counseling without even being aware of it. And classes like this, I guess they help us build our awareness, because being culturally competent makes you ethically competent too, if you want to think about it like that. But I'll talk more about that in a second. So here's the ethical dilemma of multicultural counselors. The ethical dilemma occurs when the counselor is stuck with one hand and the other here. They're forced to choose between doing the right thing ethically and bending the professional ethical guidelines on one hand, or following the professional ethical guidelines and disregarding the client's cultural context on the other. And so that's an ethical dilemma that I found through the research. And so boundaries of competence extends to cultural competence. Just to make sure this is still recording. Oh, wicked, man, we're still going. All right. So boundaries of competence extends to cultural competence. And what do I mean by this? Well, I mean that being culturally competent in session helps you build your boundaries of competence. So for me, being a Cuban young man from Miami, Florida, with not that much exposure to the Asian community, when I go to Seattle and I have to see a Japanese patient, which hasn't happened yet, but if I were to see a Japanese patient, I'd be really quick to say, hey, this is out of my cultural competency, because I didn't grow up around the Asian community, and I didn't take the time to learn what I needed to learn about them. And in Seattle, I think I have. It sounds so ignorant, but man, I've spent my time in Wajimaya, and you know, I've gone to the restaurants and done all the things I can do as an ignorant American to try to like tap into the culture, including asking coworkers and friends who are of Asian descent, you know, tell me more about it. Let me know, because I don't know much living over here on the East Coast. And now that I live on the West Coast, I think I'm gaining a little bit more competence in it. But regardless, with a Japanese patient, for me, I understand that because it's out of my cultural competencies, it's also out of my boundaries of competency as well. So that's something to be aware of. And so out of the APA Ethics Code 2.01, I pulled out A and I pulled out C. A is psychologists provide services and teach and conduct research populations in areas only within the boundaries of their competence, right? And so only within the boundaries of my competence am I allowed to treat people. And so when it comes to culture, if they are out of my cultural competence, maybe I shouldn't be treating them, or maybe I should get a consultation. Psychologists planning to provide services involving special populations, they need to undertake relevant education, training, and supervised experience, consultation, or study. And that's something important. That's why special consultations still exist, or rather special populations consultations still exist because of that. We sometimes need it. We sometimes may be the only psychologist that can treat the population, and that population is diverse, and we need the help. So, moving on to how do we avoid cultural ethical conflicts? Well, I thought about this, and this is a sentence I wrote, and I hope it makes sense. We improve our culture by knowing our people. So the best way to understand a culture is to understand the person that lives in that culture. And to do this, there's no better way than to ask the patient in front of you, tell me a little bit about your culture. I don't know much, and though that might make me seem like I'm not a very smart guy, I promise I know everything about psychology, or at least as much as I need to know to help you. But I don't know much about your culture, so just tell me more about that. I feel as though if we're transparent with the patient, it helps us more in the long run than for us to pretend we know what we're talking about, especially when it comes to their culture. So we improve our culture by knowing our people. And so one thing is understand who's in your backyard, right? So in terms of objective numbers here, we can, using the internet, pull the demographics of every state, of every city, in every state, and the nation as a whole in terms of demographics. So I did it for Seattle because that's where I am helping people right now in this time of my life, and so are you, and so we're all out there trying to help people in King County, Snohomish County. So I put, I didn't do this, I pulled this off of the 2010 census, race and ethnicity, 69% white, 8% black or African American, 14% Asian, 4% other, and 2 or more races is 5%. And Hispanic or Latino ethnicity is 7%. You might not be able to see it, but it's up there. And that's Seattle demographics for the city. And then percentage of populations who are persons of color in Seattle. King County, from 2000 to 2010, there was an increase from 27% to 35%. And in the U.S., there was an increase of 5% nationally, from 31 to 36%. And that's something to keep in mind, because what this is really trying to say is that there's a 35% chance, 100% of the chance, there's a 35% chance 100% of the time that somebody of color is going to walk through your door. And what color is it? I don't know. Persons of color, that's kind of like ambiguous, but you know, it's going to be somebody who is different from you. Let's just leave it at that. So, people of the North, as I like to call my people of Snohomish County, that's the only clinics I've ever worked at where I've been in Snohomish County, between that and the Department of Corrections. So I'm a Snohomish County guy, although I will be working in King County soon enough. But anyway, so for Snohomish County, it's important to know that 80.8% of the population are white. Only 3% are black, which is very different from King County. American Indian, Alaskan Natives, 1.5%, and Asian, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islanders, 10.4%. Hispanic or Latino, 9.5%. And in Snohomish County, they're found more in the rural areas where there is agriculture involved. And just because I'm in Miami, the people in my backyard, I just put it up there because, I don't know, I just found it interesting. So Hispanic or Latino, we make up the majority. And then white, not Hispanics, you can see them up here. And then the black or African Americans that are not Hispanic outnumber the white, not Hispanics. And then there's other races, or 2 or more races that are not Hispanic, that make up a little blip on the radar. And it's very interesting. So when I go out to Seattle, where it is 69% white, not Hispanic, right, where these are literally flipped, it's a culture shock for me, even though it shouldn't be, because I am an American guy, I guess, but I grew up with cultural heterochromia. So heterochromia is when you have two different color eyes, right? One iris is green, the other iris is brown. For me, one of my irises is Cuban and the other one is American. And so with that cultural heterochromia, I'm always walking around the world being like, oh, look at this. This is different. This isn't how I was raised, but this is what I know. Just very interesting stuff. But this isn't about me. This is about ethics, culture, and psychology. So I will continue. Let me just make sure I'm recording one more time. Still recording, still recording. I'm a little over time. I'm sorry, guys. So special populations consultations help us avoid ethical dilemmas. So if those providing treatment are not of the same ethnicity and background as the patient, you should ask questions first and avoid making ethnocentric assumptions, as I spoke about earlier. Don't make ethnocentric assumptions that are derived from your own cultural traditions. It's not good. It'll not sound good. So for the provider, discovering the socio-cultural issues that affect acceptance, approval, retention, and treatment outcome should be pursued. Here's some special populations consultants. You could pause it and write these down if you need to. I'm going to move on. Remember our place in the world. This is important. Whenever we treat the other, we must understand our place in the world. So the danger of any ethical code is that it might enforce the moral standards of the group in power. We are all Americans. We are the group in power. A fair and just code of ethics needs to do more than reflect the cultural values of those who wrote the code. And in 1984, Kitchener, he said that there's 4 basic moral principles that provide a foundation for ethical code. So no matter what, follow these 4 principles and you should be in the clear. Autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and fairness. These 2 coming from our APA ethics code, right? So if we follow these 4 things, we should always be kind of okay in terms of multicultural counseling ethically. For us, we are an individualistic country, thus we get individualistic ethics. And Harley and Corey distinguish between mandatory ethics, which means functioning according to minimum legal standards, and aspirational ethics, which means to function at a higher standard in accordance with the spirit behind the literal meaning of the code. In this way, fundamental values are identified while recognizing that different cultures may express those values through their own different cultural learned behaviors. So how to treat other cultures ethically? Well, the provider should become familiar with the historical forms of marginalization that result in present-day access barriers to treatment services for certain individuals. So understand the barriers of entry that marginalized groups may have in front of them. This includes a family and setting them up to the primary support for illness management, and that ensures that treatment is being brought back into the home. So make sure it's holistic, make sure you get the whole family, make sure it's collectivistic, make sure that you are treating people holistically, collectively, and not leaving out the important members of their environment. Lastly, those caring for the patient must have a clear understanding that socioeconomic status and not just culture plays an important role in shaping the social context of illness, help seeking, and recovery. So here's the last part. You're a rural psychologist. You're a 37-year-old immigrant Mexican male comes in. His name's Felipe. He has invited you to his house. You two have built rapport over the last 3 months at the community clinic where you work at. His presenting issue involves depression that stems from chemotherapy from, let's just say, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And you've had multiple sessions with Felipe during his treatment, and you do not feel that his invitation is a type of manipulation. In broken English, he tells you that seeing his family and breaking bread with him would give you the better understanding of how he is functioning with his family and just give you a better understanding of who he is. What do? Press pause. Press pause? Okay. All right. Now you can press play. All right. Yeah. You can visit him or you can decline. You are in the clear either way. Even though visiting his family members may seem as carrying on multiple relationships, it's up to you. The American Counseling Association, which stems from the American Psychological Association in many ways in terms of ethics, they acknowledge that multiple relationships referred to as non-professional interactions or relationships in the ethic code are sometimes unavoidable and that they can be acceptable when carried out ethically, right? So, there you go. And lastly, speaking of multicultural counseling, Never make fun of someone who speaks broken English. It means they know another language. And that was from H. Jackson Brown Jr. And that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much. And I hope I didn't rush through this too quickly, but you can pause or put me in slow-mo, I guess. I don't know. Bye.